Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for spending your Friday night with us. Our webinar today will talk about Are Teachers Technophobic? The State of ICT in Philippine Education. It will be presented by Sir Paul Ray Mark Salsag, an instructor from Colegio San Agustin, Bacolod. For our speaker tonight, he is a certified Apple teacher, Nearpod certified educator, and Microsoft Innovative Educator. He is also an advocate of e-learning, literacy, teacher education, student affairs program development, and curriculum development. He is a published researcher and national trainer with interest on learner-centered instruction and has continually trained teachers and education leaders from the preschool to tertiary levels. Just recently, he published 2 professional education textbooks, naming Technology for Teaching and Learning and The Teacher Community, School Culture, and Organizational Leadership. Our speaker has a Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English and currently working on his master's degree at the Ateneo de Manila University. Moreover, he is a licensed professional teacher and a member of the Curriculum Studies Association of the Philippines Incorporation. At present, he is connected with the Colegio San Agustin Bacolod as a senior high school teacher and college instructor. Aside from being a full-time teacher, he is also a professional lecturer in the licensure examination for teachers in various review centers and universities across Philippines for subjects related to curriculum development, educational technology, teaching profession, social dimensions of education, and facilitating learning. Please give a visual clap for Sir Paul Ray Mark Salsag.
For tonight is Are Teachers Technophobic? The State of ICT in Philippine Education. So this webinar would talk about the state of ICT in Philippine education, how it is being utilized, and how it is being perceived by most of us teachers here in the Philippines. So also, we are in a pandemic. We are currently teaching and learning in the midst of pandemic. And I know that almost of us do have a hard time in transitioning ourselves with teaching remotely with the use of technology. And also, misconceptions is that we treat ICT just as a tool, no? We treat ICT just as a tool for productivity tools, but ICT is more of that. So we will be talking about the state of ICT in Philippine education tonight. So I am Sir Paul. You can call me Sir Paul. I am currently connected with Colegio San Agustin Bacolod as a college instructor and also senior high school faculty. So I hope that we will be learning from each other in this short webinar actually with me. So these are the outline that I will be sharing with you tonight. We will be talking about first on Education 2030 as being mentioned or as being promoted by the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And number 2, we will be talking about how ICT is utilized in the K-12 program, how ICT was positioned in the K-12 curriculum of the Philippine educational system. And lastly, we will be talking about practical things, no, ways forward on how can we become ICT, how can we promote and how can we integrate rather ICT in our teaching and learning process and in our respective curriculum. We are now living in the midst of pandemic. We are trotting still the pandemic, even though that we are nearing to the end of the tunnel. But then again, if we try to look back that worldwide disruptions, most especially that we are also in the 4th industrial revolution and also COVID-19 pandemic, that 800 million jobs were displaced, no? But most especially jobs in hotels, for example, in restaurants, amenities also, and also tourist jobs, no? They are a lot of people who were displaced because of this pandemic. But not only the tourism and accommodation industry were greatly affected, also there are a lot of schools in the Philippines that was greatly affected also by this pandemic. Like, for example, there are a lot of small schools who were forced to close due to a low number of enrollment because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And also there are a lot of teachers who was retrenched because also of the COVID-19 pandemic either that they do not want the remote teaching and learning, and also either they do not want to upskill, reskill, and cross-skill in order for them to teach online. And also, there are a lot of people who were infected, of course, worldwide. 25 million people infected worldwide. That's why as we try to look back, no, because last Tuesday is marks the 1 year. 1 year. It is 1 year already of the community quarantine and lockdown here in the Philippines. So it's good to be thankful that after a year, no, we was not able to have COVID-19 in us, that we were not infected. Also, because of these disruptions, let's try to think about what they have revealed about our education. So I've got this from the World Bank Education and COVID-19, that as they have analyzed the state of education worldwide, it simply gives us the following. Number one, it resulted to an unprepared for the multiple disruptions. Let us accept the fact that we are not ready in transitioning ourselves in remote teaching and learning, or if you try to go back to what happened last year, that school opening, most especially in public schools, were being moved and moved and moved with a lot of dates. So we are unprepared for the multiple disruptions. And also let us ask ourselves, no, this time, no, we are already on the third quarter of the academic year. Let's try to ask, are we delivering quality education still, or we are delivering education simply because we are forced to? And also, it reveals that our education is not robust and resilient enough, given that the moment or whenever there is disruption, we are not ready. And of course, very important that because of this COVID-19 pandemic and also teaching and learning in the midst of pandemic, it reveals that inequality was all the more exposed because of this pandemic. Also, let us talk about fourth industrial revolution that shapes our educational system now. If we try to go back to the first industrial revolution, it talks about water and steam. It talks about the steam and water that replace human and animal power with machines. The second industrial revolution with electricity, the third industrial revolution with that of automation, and fourth industrial revolution that shapes where we are now, that it is being characterized by cyber physical systems, driverless cars, smart robotics, materials that are lighter and tougher, and a manufacturing process built around 3D printing. But let's try to ask ourselves also as educators if we are ready in teaching and learning in preparation for the fourth industrial revolution. Are we ready, or do we teach our students to become ready in terms of fourth industrial revolution landscape that they will be facing right after their education or right after their schooling? Also, the COVID-19 pandemic is a VUCA in action, a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous ecosystem that we are living. Number one is volatile, is that because we do have still the instability due to changes, that there are a lot of changes that happen to us, and we are all adjusting. We are all adjusting in terms of the education, the endoscape that we are experiencing now. The second characteristic of a VUCA ecosystem is that it is uncertain, unpredictable nature. Even now, no, we are asking ourselves, when will this pandemic end? And also, we are asking ourselves also when we can go back to face-to-face instruction. There are a lot of teachers who are telling me that, sir, when will this pandemic end? When can we go back to face-to-face instruction? Because they missed already face-to-face instruction. Also, it's a year already of teaching remotely, and then they miss already the classroom instruction or the classroom interaction that they do have with their teachers and with their parents. That's why the presence online, the presence on screen, of course, is greatly different with that of having a face-to-face instruction. But then again, let us accept the fact that we are living in a VUCA ecosystem. Hence, we are living in uncertainty, unpredictable future. Also, we are living in a complex situation, multifaceted realities. If we try to use the COVID virus as an example, that it's too complex, for example, because there are a lot of new variants, there are a lot of things that happened along the way that we do not know. And then ambiguous, confusing situation. So the challenge here is that we are living in a VUCA ecosystem. Do we teach the students to be prepared in terms of VUCA ecosystem that they will be having also soon? So that's a challenge for all of us as also as teachers, that we need to mindset ourselves that we are living in a VUCA ecosystem, that everything is volatile, everything is uncertain, everything is complex, and everything is ambiguous. Also, the very question, no, the question that runs our mind also, given that fourth industrial revolution is also characterized by robots, artificial intelligences. It's good also to ask, if will robots take my job? Will robots take my job? Or am I, if I will be replaced by robots later on as teachers? I got a website here. It's willrobotstakeMyJob.com. It's good that we could explore that site also. Allow me to stop share for a while. And then let's try to have a little bit of a play in that website. It asks if robots will replace our job as teachers or all other jobs that we do have. I hope that my internet connection will not gone through latency so that I could enter. For example, most of the search here is accountants and auditors. No? So let's try to think about if accountants will be replaced by robots or... So the answer of that website is that accountants and auditors, 94%. So accountants later on will be replaced by artificial intelligence and robots. So that's why they are doomed. No? The projected growth is 11%. So even if you try to analyze now, no, that the work of accountants can be easily replaced already by, for example, Microsoft Excel, and then you just enter the data, it could already analyze for you. And also another, for example, if lawyers on the other hand can be replaced by artificial intelligence, so it's only 4%, and then the projected growth is 6%. So hence, lawyers are totally safe in terms of replacement of the robot. But of course, let's try to think about as teachers, if we will be replaced by robots. So here, 1%. So will teachers be replaced by AI and robots? There is a very little chance of this occupation being replaced by robots or AI. However, our poll suggests a higher chance of automation, a 43% chance of automation within the next 2 decades. So teachers teaching is totally safe in terms of automation risk level of teachers, no? Given this COVID-19 pandemic. So yay, totally safe. But even though we are totally safe, there is still a challenge for all of us. There is a challenge still for all of us. Like for example, you try to imagine this one. Sorry, for a while. I might not click the... Okay, here. So for example, if this one...
Hello
you try to imagine...
everyone, I'm an English artificial intelligence anchor. This is my very first day in Xinhua News Agency. My voice and appearance are modeled on Zhang Zhao, a real anchor with Xinhua. The development of the media industry calls for continuous innovation and deep integration with the international advanced technologies. I will work tirelessly to keep you informed as texts will be typed into my system, uninterrupted. I look forward to bringing you the brand new news experiences.
So you try to imagine if you are like that, no, as teachers, that you will be replaced by artificial intelligence and then you will be teaching. But if you try to take a look, no, in the survey, that artificial intelligence or we will not be replaced by robots. But then again, the challenge is that we need to invest on skills that robots can't do, that only a teacher, a human person, a teacher can only do. The top 10 skills of 2025 by the World Economic Forum, the future of jobs. Let's try to ask ourselves if we do have already this skill. And then this is the skill that robots can't do, that robots can't have. So analytical thinking and innovation. Are we critical thinkers? Are we innovative as a person? Do we employ active learning and learning strategies? Or the strategies that we employ in our teaching and learning process are still of pre-Spanish era, for example? I came across a picture a while ago of the Philippine Normal University of their biology lab that they are in a biology lab, but all of the students are wearing Filipiniana. So you imagine, no, that they are wearing Filipiniana. And also because of global warming now, you try to imagine that. No. Also, technology use, monitoring, and control. So as teachers, do I use technology? I am conversant with technology already. Do I know how to integrate technology in my teaching and learning? Not only that you have laptop, it's enough already. And also technology design and programming is also very important. So if you try to take a look the effect of pandemic, if before you only use technology just for PowerPoint presentation, but now you were forced to record yourself, to have a screencast, for example, you are now forced to share screen, for example. These are the things that you do not do before because for you as teachers, uh, for teachers, our role is just to teach, no? And then for you, your perception before is that manipulation of computers, how to make videos are just for IT people, for information technology graduates. And also very important, these are the things that robots can't do, artificial intelligence can't do. Reasoning, problem solving, and ideation, which is very important for all of us. So the jobs landscape in year 2022, these are the top 10 emerging jobs, for example. So data analyst is one, scientists, AI and machine learning specialists, general and operations managers, software and application developers. So if you try to imagine, these are the jobs that was not yet invented in the past 10 years ago. But we do have a challenge to we have a challenge to adapt with these emerging jobs. So the challenge for us teachers is how can we prepare our students in the tomorrow that they will be facing? Also, let's try now to rethink education, the paradigms of the future. The OECD, the Organization for Economic Educational Cooperation Development, or Education 2030, they've come up with a Education 2030 framework. And the focus more is on competency. And it implies more than just the acquisition of knowledge and skills. That learning nowadays is not only more of the acquisition of knowledge and skills, it's more of now mobilization of knowledge, skills, attitude, and values. That as teachers, uh, teaching them, teaching them the basics, for example, the basic skills, the basic knowledge that they need to know is not enough nowadays. That these students need to be taught how to use these knowledge and skills in order for them to meet the complex demands. So that's why our paradigm, our way of thinking in teaching must also be changed, no? That it must begin on how we teach now, no? Which is very important, which is no longer as the same as before. That it is no longer as the same as before. So that's why future-ready students will need both broad and specialized knowledge. That's why in teaching my students, my college students now, I keep on repeating that nowadays you are no longer a sage on a stage, but you are just a mere guide on the side. A sage on a stage means that you are the authority in terms of knowledge, skills, and attitudes and values, for example, that your students will just sit down and listen to you. But nowadays, it's no longer like that. That you are now a guide on a side to facilitate knowledge, to facilitate learning in the classroom, for example, both online and offline. Because knowledge tends to be ubiquitous now. When we talk about ubiquitous, is that knowledge can easily change and also knowledge can be easily searched now. So for example, in cooking, if you do not know how to cook something, you will just simply click or you will just simply search in the YouTube and then the students can know how to cook this one already. They will just follow the procedure given in YouTube, for example. So that's why it's very important that we now teach competency, not merely knowledge, skills, and attitude, not merely acquisition, but we need to teach the students how to mobilize, how to use these knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values. Also, allow me to continue that these are the transformative competencies that we need to have. Number one is creating new value. That students need to be taught to be more inclusive and sustainable in development. that innovation is very important in order for us to thrive for tomorrow, in order for us to keep up with the challenges of the future, and also to creatively think and develop new products and services. And then they need to work in cooperation and collaboration. That this is now the new value that will shape our classroom as we go along. So if we try to apply this in practice, in pedagogical practice, let's try to ask ourselves, are we inclusive? Are we teach for sustainable development? Do we ask the students to be innovative, or simply you just assess in terms of pen and paper still? No? Pen and paper still. And also, do you employ creative thinking? Do you employ creative thinking activities for your students? Do you ask them to collaborate with one another? Or you just simply discuss still? The second is reconciling tensions and dilemmas. That we are living now in world of inequities, for example, that there are a lot of perspectives and interests, and most of the time, these interests clash with one another. So we need to have systems who act and think in a more integrated way that takes account interconnections and interrelations from both short and long-term perspectives. The third transformative competency is taking responsibility. That we possess a sense of moral responsibility and moral intellectual maturity to accept accountability of the products of one's work, for example, able to reflect upon his or evaluate his or her actions, which I think is very important in a 21st century era, in the fourth industrial revolution, that the students need to be taught of responsibility, that they need to be responsible of their actions. And very important, self-regulation, self-control, self-efficacy, problem-solving, and adaptability. Given this online teaching and learning, there are a lot of students who struggle because they are depressed sometimes, or sometimes depressed is self-diagnosed, that they diagnose only by themselves that they are depressed. Maybe they lack self-regulation, that they lack self-control and self-efficacy, that they can do this, that they can do this. And also there are a lot of news online that they are telling that it is because of the teacher that his or her son or daughter commits suicide. So which is horrible for me, which is horrible, because self-regulation, self-efficacy at the end of the day begins at home. And that is my take. So education changes. Our job is not to prepare kids for something. Our job is to help kids to learn, to prepare themselves for anything. Because at the end of the day, you do not know what will happen to these kids. A dropout before might be successful tomorrow. A dropout before might be successful tomorrow. Let's try to talk about teacher context. These are a challenge or a blessing. I've got this from Dr. Pilar Romero, the Dean of the University of Santo Tomas College of Education. The following are the characteristics of the teacher. Number one is a baby boomer. No? They are experiencing liminal space already. They do not want to be intervened. They do not want to be guided already. And of course, there are also teachers in school who are into Generation X. They are independent and need minimal supervision. So most of the teachers or Generation X doesn't want to be observed every now and then because they are more of independent. But most of the challenge of the teachers now are the millennial teachers, the teachers who undergo quarter life crisis. If before, we only know of midlife crisis, but now there is already a concept of quarter life crisis, that they do have a crisis every now and then. That as educational leaders, for example, there is a study that most of the teachers, millennial teachers now, only stay in a certain workplace for a maximum of 2 years, no? 1 and 2 years, simply because that they were not recognized, simply because that they were not given opportunity to shine. So it's a challenge. For example, if yung boss mo or yung principal mo is a baby boomer and then lahat ng mga teachers are millennials, so it's also a challenge. So we try to ask ourselves, no, but being a millennial teacher is not only a challenge, but it's more of also a blessing because they are flexible. There are a lot of skills that millennials can do also. The second is also the learner context. The learners now, we have Homo sapiens. These are learners who feared to be missed out, no? So, for example, if wala lang sa listahan yung pangalan ng estudyante, mag-chat agad yung estudyante sa'yo, "Sir, bakit wala ako dito? Ganito, ganyan. Sir, nakalimutan mo yung pangalan ko." Or, "Sir, bakit hindi ako nandyan?" So, that's one of the characteristics of a learner now. And also, our learners now do have this egolatry, that it is a form of pollution that makes us blind. That we try to, according to Pope Francis, we only think about of themselves, or they only think of themselves, no? That they are self-entitled individuals, that they need to be, for example, they need to have high grades, no? They need to have high grades. And at the end of the day, it boils down still with the dearth of interiority, their lack of self-reflection, that they do have this high level of self-entitlement because they don't have this interiority, that they are not asking themselves why I got low. How they need to assess themselves first, no? Why they got low, for example, in grades. But of course, no, there are a lot of students still who do have this egolatry because of the dearth of interiority. Because of that, no, some of the students are telling me, "Sir, I will report you to the Department of Education because you can't fail me." You can't fail me. You are not allowed to fail me in your subject. That's egolatry, a dearth of interiority. So this is a learner context, a challenge or a blessing. A mode of delivery now. So it is also a challenge, no? Or more of a blessing. Remote teaching, detached. Remote teaching, for example, modular delivery is more of a detached type of teaching and learning because there is no interaction. Enriched virtual mode, it's impersonal. Technology mediated, there is a challenge of impact. There is a challenge of impact. So that's why it's good to review ourselves. It's good to remind ourselves with the words of John Dewey. If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday, we rob them of tomorrow. We rob them of tomorrow. So if you try to imagine, John Dewey existed how many years ago, but it rings true up to this time that if we teach today's students as we thought of yesterday, we rob them of tomorrow. It's good also to think about how it is being implemented in our educational landscape now. Let's try to review what is the goal of K-12 curriculum. That the students have an opportunity to receive quality education that is globally competitive and to develop productive and responsible citizens equipped with essential competencies, skills, and values for both lifelong learning and employment. How can we teach our students to be globally competitive? How can we teach our students to be productive and responsible citizens? How can they become lifelong learners? Therefore, ICT is very important in this because ICT is a powerful tool and an important medium in attaining these goals. So ICT is very important in the K-12 curriculum, the Republic Act 10533. Let's try to talk about this in the last stretch of my presentation. This is the K-12 basic education framework, and it aims for the development of a whole person, development of the whole learner equipped with 21st century skills, learning and innovation skills, life and career skills, effective communication skills, and ICT skills. So ICT is embedded in the K-12 curriculum. These are also the depth and orders on ICT. Depth and order number 78 of the computerization program of the Department of Education, recognizing 21st century skills and ICT as a central figure of the K-12 basic education program, and also the ICT integration in teaching and learning. Let's try to think about if this is fully implemented now. Is it fully implemented now? Or do you know these things? If not, let's try to have a review and let's try to have a shift, no, on how can we deliver more quality of education in our respective classrooms later on. And also, this is the ICT integration framework as stipulated in Depth and Order number 42, series of 2016. May it be in classroom instruction, may it be in distance learning, may it be in special education, may it be in digital literacy, so that we could have transformative learning environment. So let's try to think about this one. Do we employ or do we integrate access to our students? Do we ask them to process, to organize, and to store data? Do we ask them to create, produce an output, to send, to communicate, and to collaborate? There is this study that says that most of the ICT integration are just more of productivity tools. That it's only enough that the students will know how to use Microsoft Word, for example, how to use Microsoft Excel, and to use Microsoft PowerPoint. That is ICT integration already. But that's wrong. That is a misconception because ICT integration is more than that. That you need to teach the students how to access information. That the moment that you are not there beside them, they can access information by themselves. Meron ako isang estudyante, sabi niya sa akin, "Sir, ikaw yung type of teacher na kahit saang sulok ng internet, alam mo." Diyos ko, sobra naman. Kahit saang sulok ng internet, alam ko. It's more of only of being resourceful, and also it's more of curating open educational resources online to make my job easy, to make my job easy and to work smart, for example. So that's why we need to teach students how to access information, how to process it, how to organize it, how to store it, and how to be inspired by it so that he or she can create and produce something new, and then to send, to communicate, and to collaborate. So it's good to think about this one. In terms of subject offering, ICT is embedded in the technology and livelihood education, or it's more of a component of PLE. So for example, these are the content, safe and responsible use of ICT, gathering and organizing information using ICT, analyzing information using ICT, communication and collaboration, and creation. So it's all there. That's why we have participants who are future teachers. They are pre-service teachers, so will become teachers later on. So it's a challenge for all of you. Of course, you can't give what you don't have. So that's why as early as now, you need to practice these things already. You need to acquire these things already. That you yourself know how to be responsible users of ICT. You know how to communicate, to collaborate. So these technology integration tools. And also, from grade 7 to 12, ICT courses, animation, computer programming, illustration, contact center services. But the challenge here, in terms of application, in terms of implementation, I remember during my junior high school, I asked my teacher, "Teacher, why only us section 1 and 2 who are being sent to computer lab? And then, for example, if you are into section 7, 10, 11, because during my time, until section 19, we have until section 19. What if section 19 will be the one who will be asked to go into computer laboratories?" She simply answered me. First reason, that the proportion, the ratio of computer sets and the number of students in terms of population will not suffice. And number two, these students in the lower section, section 19 and 18, these are the students who do have a poor hygiene, no? So may mga body odor, and then computer labs are air conditioned. So, but if you try to think about it, no, it's a very unreasonable for me, no? It's very unreasonable for me. But then again, let's try to think about as teachers naman, pre-service, in-service, and ongoing. This is the UNESCO ICT competency framework. For pre-service teachers, these are teachers who are in the College of Education, who are being prepared how to integrate technology, pedagogy, content, and technological knowledge. In-service is still that you were asked to have a continuous learning in terms of ICT integration and also ongoing. But what are the skills that I need as teacher? First is you need to have an understanding of ICT in education policy. So you know that already now, that you know that DepEd is asking you to integrate ICT in teaching and learning process across learning areas. That it is embedded in the curriculum and assessment, pedagogy, application of digital skills, also in terms of organization and administration, and teacher professional learning. Also, one research study says that here in the Philippines, the use of computers are mere office usage over pedagogy. So that's a challenge that most of the teachers now in public schools, most especially, use computer for office works over pedagogy. So something that is alarming to think about. Also, our Philippine professional standards for teachers have said that in order for you to become competent in strand 1.3, you need to have the positive use of ICT, both in content and in pedagogy. And strand 4.5, learning resource including ICT curriculum and planning. So that's why, as teachers, you need to become computer literate. You need to become digital literate if we try to think about it. I remember Brother Armin Luistro have said, do not hire teachers who are not computer literate. That's how Brother Armin have said before when he was still the secretary of the Department of Education, that in ranking, in hiring teachers, do not hire teachers who are not computer literate. So somewhat it prepares us for the educational landscape that we are facing now. Let's try to think about this one. This is not the last major outbreak we're ever going to see. That's a challenge. That this is not the last pandemic that we will be experiencing. So how can we thrive? How can we exist? Allow me to think about that. That we need to keep track and we need to transition ourselves in teaching. Pedagogy speaks about that we need to encourage learners to become more self-directed. That knowledge do not only come from you teachers, that there are a lot of sources of knowledge now. Pedagogy focuses on co-learning and co-creating. That's why collaborative learning, cooperative learning is already a trend and is already a need for us to integrate in our teaching and learning process. And also cybergogy, that we need to encourage learner to engage in an online environment responsibly. Utagogy, pedagogy, and cybergogy. If before you know only pedagogy, the teaching of the child, and andragogy is the teaching of the adult, these are the trend now. Yuta, you need to encourage learners to become more self-directed. Pedagogy, co-learning and co-creating. And cybergogy, that you need to encourage learner engagement in an online environment. We need to make learning truly flexible now. We need to have objectives that is easy to monitor and measure. Content that is an inch long but a mile deep. So it's no longer you need to finish the book. You need to finish all of what is there in your curriculum guide. But it's more of lifelong learning with the students. And how can they apply that in their future professions later on? And experience this tap into learner schema and promote choice. So if you have internet connectivity, there are a lot of things that you can do. Computer-assisted instruction, synchronous online learning, asynchronous online learning, that is only dependent on the internet connection that you do have. If connectivity is an issue, the students can still learn. You do have correspondence learning, project-based learning, course supermarket, and so on and so forth. That's why education for all is still the banner of the Philippine educational system. That the students will, that we need to strive to forget about inequality and we need to provide equitable education still. That's why technology is just a tool in terms of getting the kids working together and motivating them. The teacher is the most important still, but very important to think about also that even though you are a teacher there, the scenario now or the landscape that we do have now is not only that the teacher will be there, but you need to, as teacher, to facilitate and to guide your students to embrace technology as a tool. Allow me to wrap up everything with three things. Number one, the challenge is innovate. That we need to be more curious than certain now. So there is also a challenge between isolated versus grounded innovation. That you innovate simply for innovation, but you do not innovate because of the context that you do have. For example, this one, innovation department. Maybe we should try to think out of the box, but you try to take a look. He doesn't want to innovate. That there are a lot of teachers now still who don't want to innovate. They don't want to learn technology, for example. I am an educational consultant of the Dominican schools of Holy Rosary here in the Philippines. And I went to one of the school last summer here, no, in one of the town of Negros Occidental. And then the sister told me, Sir Paul, I have teachers here who are in a pre-departure area. Sir, hamba ko, sister, sabi ko, sister, what do you mean of pre-departure area? They are teachers who are 59 years old now, and they will be 60 years old next year. So she has a dilemma of what can she do for her teachers who are in a pre-departure area, given that they will be making modules. So sabi niya sa akin, sir, kahit mag-paste ng picture, nahihirapan sila. Ano kayang mangyayari kapag ganyan? Given that they will be having 8 modules to complete in a week. So that's challenging also. But it's not only for those who are in pre-departure area, that there are a lot of teachers who are very able enough, but they are not eager to learn. If in the corporate world, they pay you big bucks for thinking outside of the box, and then they tend to monetize. If you want me to innovate, you need to pay me. O, diba? If you want me to think about of something, you need to pay me. So that's one challenge also for teachers. So you try to ask yourselves, if you are like that or not. Charot lang. Also, Eureka, I finally learned how to think outside of the box. Or sometimes we need to think about if it's mediocrity. If you just innovate for the sake that you are forced to, or if you are innovate because you are passionate enough for the work that you do have. My team is having trouble thinking outside the box. We can't agree on the size of the box, what materials the box should be constructed from, a reasonable budget for the box, for our first choice of box of vendors. The challenge of innovation is that it's not only a bed of roses. It's not only okay as you go along. Innovation entails a lot of disagreements as you go along. You imagine in a faculty room that you are clamoring with one another because you are introducing something. You are introducing something which is new. This afternoon, I went to my school, and then there is a discussion of how can they monitor their teachers, no? How can they monitor their teachers? Or how can we monitor rather our teachers? So I'm thinking of an innovation, for example, and then they've clamored that there will be a lot of teachers who will be complaining for your suggestion, no? So that's why innovation is not as easy, but it would be hard at first. It would be very difficult at first. Get back in the box and start thinking like the rest of us. That you will come up to the point that there are a lot of people who will discourage you. Do not pursue, no? Because like me, no, I've existed already here for how many years? But they continue to give me salary, diba? So you try to think about that also. So thinking outside of the box didn't work. Thinking inside the box didn't work. Maybe it's a defective box. That there will be a lot of discouragements that you will experience as you go along. They only taught me how to think outside of the box. I'm not trained for circles also. So flexibility is also one thing that we need to think about. So Dave can now think outside of the box. Larry can think outside of the bag. Sue can think outside of the cup. Vinny can think outside of the balloon. Lucy can think outside of the duffel bag. Mitch can think outside of the mitten. We're ready for anything. As teachers, we need to be innovative and flexible for whatever we will be facing soon. Like for example, if you are not flexible enough as teachers, nowadays in times of COVID-19 pandemic, you will not thrive. You will not thrive. You will not be successful, or either you will not continue teaching now. Innovation, curriculum, pedagogy, and technology must always be grounded in context. That you cannot integrate technology if you don't have the tool. Most importantly, you cannot teach technology if you are not equipped to do it so. If you are not equipped, or if you are not ready to teach these technology. That's why you need not to be mediocre. You need to accept the fact that there are a lot of things that I can't teach. And one way that you can overcome that is to submit yourself for professional development. So it's a challenge that from residential learning, we are now moving into a home-based learning. But there's a lot of way. A challenging way, a hard way, a difficult way. But our way can we mean so many things. Like for example, we substitute now a chalkboard with a conferencing app and PowerPoint presentation instead of the classroom-based learning. Alteration, we revise the syllabi and curriculum map, and then we identify the most essential learning competencies and outcomes. And also perturbations, from residential learning to distance or blended learning. Restructure will shift from teacher focus to a learner-centered instruction. And value orientation, we need to enhance school structure and learning process with digital and mobile learning tools. There are a lot of students who complain, Sir, bakit yung tuition fee ganun pa rin? Because transitioning the school from a face-to-face instruction to an online learning needs to have an IT infrastructure that is very costly. Like, for example, you need to acquire Zoom, for example, if you want to, so that there is a pay for that. No? There is a pay for that. So that's why our response to innovation may lead us to make a huge difference. That's why you need to think about that your innovation must be grounded in context. There is here a quote. You can't start the next chapter of your life if you keep rereading the last one. So hindi ka maka-move on kapag you try to go back still, no, of what you can do before. That's why COVID-19 made us push the button for rewiring and not just for constantly rebooting education. But sadly, there are a lot of schools still who are thinking that maybe by tomorrow, they will go back to face-to-face instruction. But this is the new normal already that we need to face. And we need to adapt and to rewire education in order for us to deliver quality education. We offer 3 kinds of services: good, cheap, and fast. If you are good and cheap, you won't be fast. If you are fast and good, you won't be cheap. Cheap and fast, you won't be good. What is the meaning of this analogy? You need to be good. You need to be cheap. You need to be fast and you need to be good now in thinking, in deciding things. Like, for example, lockdown. How can you deliver education? How can you deliver education still? How can you make learning continue if you are not thinking fast and at the same time good so that you won't be cheap? So nowadays, the response for VUCA ecosystem is agility. When we talk about agility, you need to become agile learners and agile thinkers. That you think fast and at the same time good in order for you not to be cheap. There are a lot of schools who shut down. They close simply because that they was not able to think fast and good. So that's why they become cheap. So you need to be fast and good nowadays. New normal do have new rules, and new routines that you need to embrace. The students do have new rules also. Teachers, we have also new rules, and new routines that we need to embrace. That sometimes, no, before, ang daming teachers na nag-give up kasi napakahirap daw magturo online. But now, no, parang wala na akong naririnig. Before, ang daming umiiyak during faculty meeting, but ngayon, they've adjusted. But they've adjusted already. That's why innovation mindset. Be more curious than certain. So, what's the difference, no, of having a fixed mindset and a growth mindset and that of an innovation mindset? If you are fixed mindset, I can't learn if I can't do school. So fixed mindset para sa'yo. There are a lot of teachers, there are a lot of parents who are fixed mindset. They did not send their students to school simply because that for them, online teaching and learning, the students will not learn. Their kids will not learn. So fixed mindset. Growth mindset, I can keep learning if I put in the effort and stay motivated. But what's the difference with innovation mindset? I have a unique opportunity to learn new skills and try something I've never done before. That do not be contented with what you do have now, that you can do more. Only creativity asks you for that. So only creativity is lacking. So that's why we need to learn, no? As teachers, we need to learn more. That's why if you try to take a look before backpack, hands, but now minds, that knowledge economy is very important now. So from agricultural, industrial, and knowledge economy, it's more of now the skill, it's more of now the competence that we do have, that we could have. Like for example, this one, I would like to emphasize novel and adaptive thinking. Are you coming up with creative solutions? Design mindset. Are you representing and developing tasks and work processes for desired outcomes? So, do you thinking novel? Do you have this design mindset now? Number two, collaborate. That we need to collaborate to integrate. So teachers, tech administrators, and school administrators need to collaborate one another in order for us to be successful in the teaching and learning now. So these are the requisites of an ICT-enabled school system, that you need to collaborate with one another. What are the learning needs of the students? So the students need to know how to use the tools. They need to be active, collaborative, constructive, and authentic. So therefore, if these are the needs of the school, the faculty do have the development needs, because the faculty cannot deliver what the students need if they are not prepared. But sadly, in a research or in a survey that I came across, that ICT integration in terms of faculty development were not given due emphasis. But it's not only enough for faculty need. The leaders need to have also ICT-enabled leadership. Like for example, what I am doing now in my consultancy schools is very easy. I will just send an email. For example, if I want to ask something, I just make a survey and then the teachers will answer that. And then I could receive already the data. I could have already an access with the data. And then also, very important is the resource infrastructure need. You cannot pivot yourself for ICT-enabled school system if you don't have, of course, the infrastructure. Also, these are the characteristics of an ICT-enabled skill, that you have an equitable access of technology, tools where active, collaborative, authentic, and goal-oriented learning are best served, to be able to use technology tools in teaching and learning, that you are using technology in the teaching and learning process. The leaders are using ICT in terms of governance and administration. And then the school provides computer units needed for ICT-enabled learning. So this is the case of the schools division of Batak in terms of transitioning themselves for ICT. So that's why you may be in public school or private school. It's only at the end maybe of school leaders that you can become ICT-enabled school. For example, here in the case of the division of Bacolod City, we have here a schools division superintendent who are very innovative. She sent last year, before the pandemic, she sent all of her education supervisors to a conference on ICT integration sponsored by the La Salle Zobel in Manila. And in order for her to deliver ICT-enabled instruction here in the division of Bacolod City, at the end of the day, it's more of collaborativeness. Thirdly, transform. Aim to transform, not just inform. Some common issues now. Poor time management and study habits. Most of the students are complaining for this, no? That they cannot cope up because they don't have study habits. So many more distractions. Chatting, Facebook, for example, YouTube. These are the distractions for them. Online directions are difficult to follow. That they compare face-to-face instructions with that of distance learning instructions. Unrealistic work plus deadlines. So daming pinapagawa every week, maraming pinapagawa sa estudyante. And students' uncertainty, anxiety about readiness for the assessments. Or the teachers are also having anxiety. How well did we teach? May natutunan ba yung bata sa akin? So these are some common issues and challenges that we do have also. And in terms of assessment also, for teachers, it's easy to cheat for them also. But there is a dilemma on this, no? In terms of teachers' decisions, that if we try to focus more of wellness of the students, logistical issues that become aggravate wellness issues or access issues, if you try to focus more of wellness, learning can also be bargained. Like for example, if for you only have 2 assessments, so it will suffice? It will suffice or not? Or if you try to focus more on learning, student engagement, rigor, and academic integrity, the wellness naman can be bargained. That most of the students will feel that they are anxious, will feel that they are depressed, will feel that they are no longer inspired to learn. So there is a challenge, there is a dilemma for us to balance wellness and learning in teaching and learning in a COVID-19 pandemic now. Let's try to think about this one. What matters most now? Less of lower order thinking, less of supplying a response assessments, less of focus on product. But we need to pivot ourselves to more of higher order thinking now, constructing a response, focus on process, and focus more of depth. But you need to have the checklist. Even though I focus on higher order thinking, the students are well, the students can access it. Or for example, parati ka nagpapagawa ng video, pero yung mga estudyante mo, puro cellphone lang yung ginagamit na technology. So how can they cope up with that? Or are they engaged already? Are they engaged in what you are giving? Is there rigor, depth, or what you are asking them to do can help them to become future teachers, for example, or can become future professionals? And there is academic integrity. Like for example, if your assessment are only focused on what is this, so therefore, it can easily be searched, right? It can be easily searched online. For example, what is the full name of Jose Rizal? So it can be easily searched. So there is no academic integrity in that. And it not truly measures the learning of your students. So we need to focus on competencies as Education 2030 envision. That what matters today is not how much our students know, but what they can do with what they know. For example, what matters most in my subject now, I'm handling curriculum development class now. What matters most for me now is that these students can know how to make a curriculum map, can know how to make a lesson plan, and know how can they deliver the lesson. Well, that's what matters most for me now. So we need to focus more of competencies, not only of knowledge. That's why academic ease were given importance by the Department of Education. Let's try to think about that. Information overload or the cognitive load theory of John Sweller can help us also in terms of academic ease. Intrinsic cognitive load, because we are bombarding students of new information. So what can we do that? What can we do about that? So therefore, you need to chunk information. That for example, in the module, ito lang muna yung papalabas ko. And the next module, ito naman. So also, deep processing of new information by integrating it with previous learning. That you need to have constant reflection. And lastly, distract working memory from processing new information. Therefore, as teachers, you need to use simple design. That's why I am challenging the modules now, not only of public school, but also of other private schools. Yung module nyo, mai-encourage ba yung bata na magbasa? Or even in the LMS, kung puro text lang lahat, mai-encourage ba yung bata na mag-aral kapag ganyan? Or even your PowerPoint presentation, kung puro text yung PowerPoint presentation and then binabasa mo lang din, mai-encourage ba yung bata na mag-aral? So that is information overload theory or the cognitive load theory of John Sweller. That we need to chunk information, constant reflection, and to use simple design in our learning materials that we are giving. So modules here and there. What is it about? That is self-paced that only the students will do. And dapat, it must be 10 pages written in a manner that it facilitates conversation, not dumping content. Not dumping content. Quantity just enough. Quality must be the focus, clarity, and comprehensibility. Also, less is more is very important. That every added click, for example, another opportunity for students to get lost. That's why we need to make things simple now. That's why we need to ask ourselves, are we making things complicated or are we making things simple? Sometimes siguro, no, kasi challenge ngayon sa most of the schools, yung challenge sa mga schools ngayon, yung pagbibigay ng assessment. Kasi ang dami, nag-overlap sila sa isa't isa. So sometimes, plotting of tasks altogether works very well. That you need to plot the task, no? For example, this week, yung English, Math, and Science lang muna yung magbibigay ng task, di ba? So that's also a challenge. Ito, much more realistic. Much more realistic. Allow me to proceed with this one. On academic on academic workload, for example, merong 8 learning areas yung bata. And then magbibigay ka ng 3 written work and 3 performance tasks sa module. So merong 48 tasks and assignments. So ano mangyayari? Overload yung bata. So imagine, in a week, 48 tasks and assignments yung gagawin ng bata. Nakapakahirap kapag ganyan. Another, for example, ito yung ginagawa natin minsan. May LMS, may Zoom, for example, may Google Meet. Ito, syempre, pinapag-aralan lahat to ng bata. At minsan, sa email mo pa, pinapasubmit. Or minsan, naglalagay ka pa, mag-Mentimeter tayo, mag-Nearpad tayo, mag-Padlet tayo, mag-Quizzes tayo. Dapat wala na to. Wala na yan. So, dapat, you need to stick only, no? To stick only on what is needed, because sometimes it would become a challenge for the students. They would have a difficulty in terms of the usage of these educational apps also, and also email. Kasi pwede na ding masubmit niyan sa LMS. Bakit magpapasubmit ka pa sa email? Yan yung problema ko last time sa mga teachers namin dito. The students are complaining, "Sir, yung instruction ni ma'am nasa LMS pero ipapasubmit sa email." So, very challenging, no, on that part also. Eto, ginagawa din natin ito minsan on variation of learning activities. O written work. Written work number 1, essay, reflection paper, essay, reflection paper, essay. Ano to? Essay writing contest. So, walang variation. Ganun lang din yung pinapagawa mo. Or sa performance task naman, papagawa si sir ng poster. Papagawa naman siya ng video. Poster, picture, video, poster. What to, sir? Poster making contest. So, there is no variation kasi paulit-ulit lang yan yung pinapagawa mo. Wala ka na may pinapagawang iba. Pwede mag-podcast, di ba? Pwede namang pwede namang kahit 2 or 3 sentences lang na reaction sa isang or even yung question, paulit-ulit din. Wala pang iba. So, we need to be varied also in terms of the task that we are making. Etong ayaw ko talaga na ginagawa ng teachers minsan. May exams online through, for example, Schoology, through Google Classroom, pero may video conferencing app pa. So, for example, nag-zoom sila lahat para mag-quiz lang, no? Para makita mo yung bata. Pero hindi mo naman alam kung ilang tabs yung ino-open niya dyan, no? So, what for, no? What for pa na mag-video conferencing app in an LMS-based assessment? So, there is no reason for that na you can do assessment synchronously. Sir, kasi we need to promote academic integrity. You cannot promote academic integrity if you have video conferencing app. What can you do is to change how you design your assessment. That it's not only more of giving a response, but it's more of being creative, innovative, and asking the students to make a product. So that's why we need to keep the workload to the minimum. Readiness of the students. What are the skills that they need for them to go up to the next level? What are the skills that is very useful for them, that is endurance? What are the things that the students will be needing when they will be getting licensure exam, for example, or national achievement test, for example? And what are the knowledge and skills that they need in a multiple discipline? So we need to be real. Readiness, endurance, assessed, and need to have a leverage. So ICT, that's the 3 things that I want to leave for you, no? To leave with you rather this evening. That as teachers, we need to be innovative, innovate, collaborate, and transform. Allow me to end with this one. Before COVID-19, there are a lot of outcomes. Learning design around endless content, hindi matapos-tapos na content. Yung teacher lang, yung focus. Siya yung reyna sa classroom. Lahat-lahat manggagaling sa kanya. And content, lahat yung assessment. Enumeration, identification. But during COVID-19, only a set of learning outcomes which is real. Learning design around limited content, that quality is given of more of importance over quantity. Learner-driven learning experiences, and experience-focused assessment. So, if we do have a second phase of this webinar, we will now be more focused of how to design naman, how to design naman ICT-led or technology-enabled instruction. So in the old normal, this is a Chinese proverb. Give man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. That's a Chinese proverb. In the interim normal, syempre, I don't know how to fish, and I don't care to learn. I don't even like fish, so don't bother me. So non-motivated student. But in the new normal, if you give me a fish, you have fed me for a day. If you teach me to fish, then you have fed me until the river is contaminated or the shoreline cease for development. Oo nga, no? Tinuruan mo akong mag-isda. Paano kapag nagka-oil spill? Paano kapag nagka-oil spill? Paano ko makakain yan? But if you teach me to organize, then whatever the challenge, I can join together and with my peers, and we will fashion our own solution. Innovate, collaborate, transform. Good evening, everyone. Maybe if we could have some questions. Ms. Bianca is here.
Thank you so much, Sir Paul. So do we have any questions for Sir Paul to answer? Well, I really appreciated the lecture of Sir Paul. Like, it talks about like teachers have to adjust, especially when it comes to assessment, in consideration of the mental health of the students here in the pandemic, and what can we do to motivate them. So I've always known about fixed mindset and growth mindset, but it's my first time to actually hear about innovative mindset. So that was actually a really good point to learn from this lecture. Does anyone care or would like to unmute or show us your video on what they learned from this lecture if you don't have any questions? Many of our participants really appreciated your lecture, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
So if we don't have any questions for Sir Paul as of now, allow me to share my screen to present you with something. All right, so we've been so inspired by Sir Paul's lecture, but if you also want to volunteer for Kaisipan, hold on, and present some of your ideas when it comes to education here in the Philippines, kindly reach out to us in www.kaisipan.org or search us on Facebook at Kaisipan Incorporation. So, are you ready to make a change in your community? Are you ready to be a trailblazer here in the education space here in the Philippines? Got an idea for a TED Talk for education and you would like to share with us? Do you want to inspire students? Then please join Kaisipan, and this is a great NPO that we would love you to be a part of. So we have this project called Dalab Guro. So Dalab Guro is a Filipino term for professor. So essentially this is our project. We're welcoming other voices into classroom that provides other perspectives in education, adds variety to the classroom routine, and that kind of advocate that education is a collaborative enterprise. So we're inviting from different educators, from the different field when it comes to ICT, education, English, psychology. So please join Kaisipan and share us your thoughts. So also one of the projects of Kaisipan is the International Society for Technology and Education. So I was actually part of the first batch. So my batch talked about how we can kind of improve educational technology here in my nation. And then the second batch, which is ongoing, it talks about the open education resources. For those Kaisipan batch, they would actually collate different open education resources so that we can share it with other public schools who don't quite have access to some of the resources. So for our next batch here in ISTE, we're gonna focus on artificial intelligence. So please go to kaisipan.incorporation if you want to avail for that scholarship here in ISTE, and then we'll keep you posted. Also, if you want to visit our project, if you want to know more of our other projects, please visit kaisipan.org. So this is our current project, Malayang Kaalaman Open Educational Resources, or OERs. So yun lang naman po. Do we have other questions?
I think there's a question from John.
Hi, sir. We're all aware that the country is gradually reopening the economy and vaccinations have already commenced. Do you think schools should follow? And if not, what things do you think should be improved in educational institutions, thinking that the shift to remote learning has been a challenge to all?